Our moderator opened this session by explaining that our exploration of the topic of media freedom is moving this afternoon from crisis to recovery. But for many countries in the OSCE region, we remain in the crisis stage without any realistic expectation that we are on, or will soon be on, a road to recovery. Therefore, it's important to review the environment in which independent media operates. Despite what an uninformed observer of these proceedings might infer, there is little to no independent journalism left in Azerbaijan. Independent Azerbaijani journalists are either in jail, in exile, or worse still, dead. According to the Committee to Protect Journalists, nearly 24 journalists are currently in jail in Azerbaijan. Indeed, last year, Azerbaijan was ranked as one of the world's top 10 jailer of journalists. At last year's first SHDM, Azerbaijani HRD Anar Mammadli joined the proceedings to highlight the significantly deteriorating human rights situation in Azerbaijan. He was detained weeks later and has remained in pretrial detention on trumped-up charges ever since. We call for his release. In Georgia, we have seen a dizzying increase in violent attacks against independent journalists as they seek to cover the protests which erupted in November and have taken place every day since. Georgian NGOs and human rights defenders report total impunity for those responsible for attacks and any lack of real investigation by authorities for those attacks. At the same time, the Georgian authorities are actively aiding the Azerbaijani authorities in utilizing transnational repression against independent journalists. Afgan Zadigov, Azerbaijani journalist and editor-in-chief of the independent outlet Azov TV, has long faced politically motivated persecution for his reporting on corruption and social injustices in Azerbaijan. After fleeing Azerbaijan in December 2023 to escape harassment, Zadigov sought refuge in Georgia with his wife and 2 young daughters. However, he was arrested by the Georgian authorities in August 2024 on an extradition warrant issued by Azerbaijan and has been held in detention since, despite an order by the European Court of Human Rights earlier this month banning his extradition. I would also like to draw state's attention to the case of Belarusian journalist Andrei Alexandru. Andrei was detained in January 2021 on trumped-up charges of violating public order and subsequently sentenced to 15 years in prison. Andrei is one of 40 journalists currently in prison in Belarus. In Bosnia and Herzegovina's Republika Srpska, the authorities recently adopted new legislation to establish a special registry of NGOs, many of which are independent media organizations. The law is widely seen as retaliation against government critics. On the same day that the law was adopted, the authorities raided the media outlet Capital.ba, citing recent anti-civil society statements by the U.S. government authorities, which falsely claimed fraud and abuse in the NGO sector. Indeed, U.S. government anti-NGO rhetoric is being weaponized across the OSCE region to expand and deepen attacks against independent civil society, including media organizations. Madam Moderator, in light of these examples, I'd like to ask the panelists the following questions. How can media freedom survive when the legislative and policy landscape, not to mention anti-civil society rhetoric and outright attacks, obstruct independent media and any objective reporting within a country? And what recommendations do you have for the authorities cited to reverse their attack on independent media and journalists?